You are listening to the Gospel-Centered Education Podcast, brought to you by Community Christian School in Tallahassee, Florida.
Hello and welcome to the Gospel-Centered Education Podcast. My name is Tom Argersinger. I'm your host, and my co-host for today is, and actually every day, is Kelly Allen. Hey, Kelly.
Hey, Tom. On the Gospel-Centered Education Podcast, we explore how we as Jesus followers can connect the dots between education, contemporary culture, and biblical theology, and live like Jesus in a broken and challenging world. And today, we are happy to welcome Reverend Jeff Collier.
Reverend Jeff Collier. Very
And
nice.
we don't typically call you that, but you are. You're a reverend.
Mm-hmm.
We're so happy to have you here today talking about leadership. And but first, I want to introduce you to everybody. You are a reverend, you are a pastor, but you also teach Bible here at CCS, and you serve as chaplain, leadership program director, and teacher of high school biblical studies.
Many hats.
That is correct.
Yes,
Many hats.
you do a lot around here. But you began teaching at CCS in 1996, is that right?
That is correct.
Yes, and then
Wow.
you moved away for a little while, but came back to help us start our high school again, right?
Yes.
That's right.
Yeah, in 2007. So you've been working back here since 2007.
Correct.
Yeah.
17 years.
Wow.
But during that time, you were able to serve as bivocational pastor for 6 years in Panacea.
Yes.
Yeah, so not only were you doing all that stuff here, you were also pastoring a church in Panacea. Wow, and you've been married for 24 years to your lovely wife, Paula, who
Correct.
everybody loves. And you have 3 children, Erin, who graduated CCS in 2021.
Yes.
And now she's at UAB, right? Yeah, she's brilliant. You have Shannon, who is set to graduate from CCS in a month.
In a month.
Wow.
From yesterday.
Wow. Congratulations to her. And then Jeremy, who's a sophomore at CCS.
Yes.
Yeah, so you've got a lot going on. And you do a lot around here. And one of the things is the leadership program. And so as a parent, I've heard a lot about the leadership program at CCS, but I don't really know what that is. So what is the leadership program in a nutshell?
You are not alone. The CCS leadership program is designed to use the outdoors as a classroom or laboratory to teach students leadership skills through real life scenarios in order for students to be able to lead those to whom God calls them anytime, anywhere, as we like to say. We include all of our high school students because we believe that God calls all of us to lead someone, even if it's only ourselves. We use the outdoors just as this is a question I get, so I'll put it in the answer.
Yeah.
We use the outdoors because it is an ethical way to add stressors and fears to students so that they learn to lead in hard times, not just in easy times. We believe it's important for them to learn to endure prolonged hardship cheerfully, which is a little countercultural.
Yeah, it really is.
A little bit.
And we do make accommodations for students who need them while still pressing them to become better leaders.
I know one of the things over the years that has been, this is good because one of the questions has been, well, why would anybody intentionally create hard circumstances for my kid? And that's a common parent.
Yeah,
question,
as a
right?
parent, I'm trying to make it easy for my kid.
That's
I
right,
want them to
yeah.
have a nice life. I don't
So-
want to make things hard.
Exactly. So what, Jeff, would you say particularly about introducing that kind of controlled environments that create a little bit of stress at least and push them? Why is that a good thing, do you think?
I might be the only one, but I've found life to be hard, not easy. And so if we're preparing our students for real world situations, then leading in hardship is real life. I don't think most people don't need a whole lot of leading when things are easy. It's when times get tough.
That's exactly right.
That we call on leaders. And so we want to train them for those real life situations.
And in a nutshell, I think we've always said that does build character. Character is built when things are not easy and are challenging, and the art form, I think, is kind of keeping it at a level that's reasonable.
It's manageable.
Then you get into the question of who decides what's reasonable. But no, I think that's really, really good. That's excellent. Yeah.
Yeah, and I think that kind of answers my second question that I had for you was why put the students and parents and like your own staff through like the work if it's extra? Would you have anything to add to that?
Work,
I mean,
right?
it is. It's a lot of work.
There's a lot of planning. There's a lot of setup, preparation. Lots of hours go into all of the events. The instructors were away from our families many times during the year. But the reason why we do it is, as we started the high school, someone came up with a mission statement. I think it was the Lord through someone sitting somewhere near me. But the mission statement that was adopted is that we're training people to answer the call of God whenever it comes, wherever it leads, and whatever the cost, by equipping students with renewed and skillful minds, strong hands to serve, and burning hearts for Jesus. That first part, answering the call anytime, anywhere, whatever the cost, is really the reason for the leadership program. It also involves the other three elements at the end, but we think about what is the most extreme situation that God can call us to normally. I mean, there's, I guess, things that are outside of the norm, but we think about the U.S. military, we think about missions work, and since the U.S. military does a great job of training people when they call them into action, we're really looking at missions as an extreme form of answering the call of God. And so if they are prepared for that, then anything else we do, that anything else that God calls us to, will also be prepared for. If do I have a moment for a story?
Sure.
Absolutely.
The time that this really kind of hit home with us, I think, Mr. Argersinger, you were on this trip with us. It was to Guatemala. It was our first overseas mission trip. And we have all of the students and instructors have backpacks that have all of our survival gear, first aid kits, things that we would need in a survival situation, and water for the day, a little bit of food. Our Bibles, we always carry those on our back wherever we're going. And we were standing outside of a church on a mountaintop in a remote area in Guatemala, and one of the locals was telling another instructor, another teacher at CCS, was telling the two of us that he said, "You see that peak over there, that next range of mountains, the gospel's never reached there." And the guy I was with said, "Really? It's never been there?" And the local said no. And then he said, "See, that second one, we know it's never been there either."
Wow.
And so I looked at my fellow instructor and I said, "Do you realize with what our students and we have on our backs, that we could take the gospel to them today?" And I just remember his eyes getting really big, like, whoa. Not that he didn't realize it, but just as we stated it, just the reality that we could go and do something that would be a lasting effect, that it hit home for him, and he's now serving as a missionary somewhere else in the world right now, and not because of that statement, but because of those experiences that God puts out. And that's why I've told Mr. Argersinger that the missions program, which ties into the leadership program, is dangerous. Not talking about life or limb, but losing instructors to the call of God to missions.
Yeah, that's actually really true. And we set ourselves up for that by saying really the end game of everything we do here at CCS really is missions.
Yeah, we were talking about that last week.
Yeah. For sure. And this is what a great story. I remember that situation. And it reminds me too of when we talk about gospel-centered education, because people are always asking, well, what makes this different than some other school or whatever? And the issue, I think, really is exactly that. I mean, when we say gospel-centered, in one sense, it's exactly what we mean. The gospel is the main issue. And then fundamentally, I think what we're doing here at CCS or any school that's practicing gospel-centered education is fundamentally saying we're supposed to be other-centered.
Right.
It's not primarily about me getting all what I need and being successful in life. And that's very important. But primarily it's about how can we use all of that for the benefit of others in the kingdom.
Further the kingdom.
Further the kingdom. Yeah, I think that's really, really important. So we talked a little bit about, how some people don't really know what the leadership program is about. The other thing that's been interesting over the years is the misconceptions that people have about the leadership program. And some of them are kind of amusing, actually, but can you maybe hit on a couple of the main common misconceptions people have?
Certainly. We had a student that graduated from CCS, and about 3 years after she graduated, she came back and she said, "Mr. Collier, I just want you to know I have never been camping since I graduated CCS, and I never plan to." And I said, "Well, that's okay. Why would you tell me that?" There's a lot of camping that goes on in the leadership program. And she said, "Well, I just wanted you to know that I don't use that skill." And I would say that just like we sit in classrooms to learn math or history, we don't expect our students to stay in a classroom all their life. We use the outdoors not because we want people to become outdoors men and women, but because it is the laboratory for our leadership program.
Absolutely.
So that's the first one.
That's a great way to explain it. I can tell you're a teacher.
Thank you.
Yeah.
One of the others is because every year we do a Fit to Serve test, which is like a physical fitness test for our students. And so one of the misconceptions is that only people who are in great physical shape can really succeed in CCS's leadership program. And actually the point of the Fit to Serve test, the point of physical exertion, it is to improve our physical fitness, but it's really to challenge us not to give up, because giving up is easy. And so we have an axiom in the leadership program, which is progress, not perfection. And we say that axiom often. I don't tell them before the Fit to Serve test that this is really about progress, not perfection. But that's really what we're looking for is, are you striving to do the best you can today? And then if so, how can I get a little better for whatever reason? I like to be in shape as much as I can be, so that when someone says, "Hey, I need help moving or moving something," I don't say, "Well, let me call some friends." I get to say, "Okay, let me help." So that's kind of our goal there. And then the last one, which I think is the most unusual that I never thought of, was that we are end of the world preppers. The reason why we teach our survival skills and land navigation is so, when the zombie apocalypse or whatever you want to call it happens, that we're ready to survive. Actually, the reason why we teach survival skills and land navigation is because we use the outdoors as our classroom. We have to prepare for the worst case scenario. And so should a team ever get separated from the rest of us, I know that they have the skills and the tools to be able to survive until we get to them. I also promise the students that if that ever happens, that they're not going to be alone in the woods, because their lives, my job and livelihood depend on me bringing them back on time. So I'm out there with them.
That's right.
So those are kind of the biggest misconceptions. I remember one parent said one time, after I think their daughter was maybe a junior, and I think they said it to you. They said, "Mr. Augersinger, our child has carried their survival kit and their med kit, which weigh a lot." They don't really weigh a lot, but to this parent they did, and they've carried them around and they've never had to use them. That's terrible that you would make them do that. And our response was, praise the Lord.
Yeah, right. Exactly.
They have carried their survival kit and their med kit, and they haven't had to use them yet.
Yeah. Mhm.
That is 3 years of God's blessing on us.
Well said.
Really?
Well said. Yeah.
Yeah, well,
That's good.
That's
That's great.
awesome. Yeah. Well, so as a parent with younger children, like, I'm wondering, why is this only a high school thing, or is it only a high school thing?
So what I call the outdoor leadership program proper is right now only a high school focus. However, there are plans in the near future to bring that down into the middle school. There's already portions of the leadership program in the middle school. We do our service learning projects once per semester, each grade. We go and do community service, and we use the same team aspect that we use in the leadership program. We start teaching it with the middle schoolers, so when they come into high school, it's not brand new. And then with our elementary school, the teachers do a great job of having, we talk about the motto for our leadership program is lead to serve and serve to lead. And our elementary teachers do a great job of assigning tasks and responsibilities to students each week, where they all get to serve one another, whether it be the safety patrols, whether it be in class. You have the board cleaners, you have the door holders.
Yeah.
There is no little service job. All of it is serving, because we serve not to serve people, but serving the Lord.
Yeah.
Each individual act is an act of service to the Lord.
Yeah, you see that in chapel too, where they get up and one of them.
Yes, lead chapel.
Yes.
Yes.
Yeah, that's really neat. So that's neat that it is being brought down to the younger grades, and there's a Beyond Week in middle school as well, right?
8th graders go through a Beyond Week, which teaches them kind of the basics, and it's an introduction before they get into the high school. Some people are a little trepidatious about the leadership program, and so giving them a little taste of it, we make them high schoolers for a week, basically, and give them a field trip on the last day. And I think it alleviates a lot of the fears. Sometimes it amps up others when spiders crawl on people. People don't like spiders. That's the biggest thing, I think.
And it is Florida.
It is Florida. There's lots of them.
There's that. Right, there's a lot of them. Yeah. Well, so again, back to that idea that part of the purpose really is to challenge people in order that they can grow in a controlled setting that's safe. And so what are maybe some of the greatest challenges that maybe an individual student will actually have as they go through the program?
So I think discomfort is the first one. Our first event is in August. It is one night we will go and tent camp in Florida in August. If you have not done that, you have not felt discomfort. And that is one. Many of our students and even their parents sometimes value comfort over other things. And so that's a big obstacle, is allowing people to feel discomfort. Because again, that endurance, getting to the other side of it. I remember this last August, it was 80 degrees at about 4:30 in the morning, because that's when I woke up. And so when I started my fire to be able to have my cup of coffee, which is my comfort item, I was sweating at 4:30 in the morning in Florida.
That's just never good.
It's not good. But one of the axioms is challenge builds strength, and strength comes from the Lord.
That's exactly, that's exactly. And it's interesting, because the discomfort does build character.
It does.
If it's approached the right way. But also there's a practical sense that sometimes missions that people have to go on, whether it's kingdom directly kingdom missions or other things, sometimes you do have to stay in places that are not comfortable, and maybe you have to sleep on the floor or whatever it might be. And if you've never had that experience, it can be a real deal killer for you.
Correct.
So therefore, again, it has multiple purposes, the actual thing. So what's maybe another real challenge that people bring?
We talk about the outdoors, fear, whether it be the nighttime in the outdoors and you hear an armadillo shuffling around and it sounds like it is the largest bear that you've ever heard, and it's really just a little armadillo shuffling through the weeds. I have an armadillo story about you, but I'm not going to tell that one today.
that is a classic.
And fear of the unknown or the unfamiliar. Sometimes people fear not knowing what's coming next. And so sometimes we guard the schedule just so people have to overcome that fear of, it's okay, live in the moment, trust what we're doing now, and the next will come. And then lastly, responsibility. Students understand as we talk about leadership that once we train them, they are responsible for this information. We put some of our upperclassmen in charge of teams, and a team of 4 other students, and therefore they feel that weight of responsibility. Now it's for a brief time, and the others that are with them are trained almost the same way the upperclassmen are, and yet there's still that sense of responsibility. It's easier not to be responsible. It's easier not to lead.
And there again, in our culture, sometimes that responsibility is a good thing can be really, really countercultural and can be difficult for people. So it's easy to talk about the things that are challenging about the leadership program, but there's a tremendous amount of benefits that if young people engage with the program and let it have its work, so to speak, in their lives, there can be a lot of positive things. So what are some of the benefits maybe that kids will get out of this?
I think the number one that I have seen over now, this is the 17th year of the program, I think confidence. When one meets and overcomes challenges, even big challenges that are presented to them regularly in high school, it's not very difficult for them to overcome challenges in college where there's a store nearby that they can go to if they didn't bring the right tools. Whereas in the woods, you got to make it up, improvise, adapt, and overcome when you're there. And then also reminding them that God will not leave them nor forsake them, no matter what those challenges are. So confidence, preparation, learning to be ready for whatever comes your way. That's one of the things that we put on the students, and they do a good job with that. And then I think the last is independence and interdependence. Interdependence is really where we want people to be, knowing how to work with others, get along with others, even through difficult times. And then if your faith or your circumstances leave you alone, again, going back to the confidence, these students know how to make it on their own. And so as a parent who has one student already graduated and one about to be, I don't worry about my daughters where they are, because I know that God is with them first and foremost. And secondly, I know that they are trained to handle any situation they're going to be in.
It's been neat because we've had stories from alumni, where they've been on the various places. Maybe they've been on a college trip. Let's say one comes to mind in Costa Rica, for instance, and they're in the middle of they're on a school, a college trip where I forget what the course was, but they're in the middle of the mountains taking a hike. Nobody brought any water. Nobody had any training whatsoever, and so they're in the middle of the Costa Rican mountains in Costa Rica, and they get lost.
Wow.
The teacher, the college professor, had no idea what to do. They had no communication except their cell phones, and the cell phones didn't have very good reception. And so the only person in that scenario that knew what to do was our graduate. And actually, you could even go so far as to say that person almost saved that group because they knew what was going on. And that's because people think it will never happen, right?
Yeah.
It's like with all of our comforts, it will never happen.
Right.
that will have to do that, and you have no idea
Right.
whether that's true or not. So
I have an 8th grade daughter who's about to go into the leadership program, and
Yes.
I'm kind of anxious about it. It's gonna be interesting, just kind of watch her go through it. But I'm like, what if she struggles in this? So what's one piece of advice that you would give to a parent whose student is struggling, whether in the leadership program or in any area of life?
You may not like this.
disclaimer.
My answer is do not rescue them from the situation.
But isn't that my job as a parent, to rescue them?
I'm going to be flippant. If those of you who don't know me, you don't know the heart of this is really out of love, but we're not the Messiah. Yeah. So as parents, we're not the saviors. There's only one. But I would say walk with your student.
Okay.
Equipping them, encouraging them through the situation all along the way. This is what the Holy Spirit does for us in life. He doesn't get us out of the tough situations. Right? Sometimes we pray that. Most of the time, He doesn't rescue us from the situation. He rescues us through the situation.
That's
He shows us the way.
And He'll be with us in the situation.
He gets right. And so we all need to teach our students, I think, to develop the situation so that the best possible outcome for the most number of people involved can be achieved. And that's a skill that we try to teach. We give them encouragement and meaningful praise along the way as a parent. That's important to be a cheerleader for our kids, I think.
Yeah.
And then let them know that your love for your daughter does not depend on how they go through the situation. You will love them no matter what.
Right.
And I think once we do that, you'll have equipped your daughter
Yeah.
to get through every situation.
Yeah.
I want to drill on this for a second.
Yeah.
I know we're running a little short on time, but I want to drill on that because I think that's really, really important question. So as a parent approaches this, I think there's a couple things that go, and this is just my experience in listening to parents. They're afraid. There is a sense in some people that they're afraid their kid's going to get hurt, but that's a rare occurrence in the leadership program, and they're all trained in first aid and CPR if there is any trouble along that, as well as the instructors, and have advanced training and all those things, et cetera. So it's a safe environment in that sense.
Yes.
But I think the greater thing is, and it gets back to a podcast we had earlier where we talked about the theology of suffering.
Yeah.
And how the average person today, Christians included, believe that fundamentally suffering is something to be avoided at all costs. And if you can avoid it, then why in the world would you ever choose it? And I think we've addressed that. I mean, there are reasons why, because it does develop and because it is real life, because there's going to be suffering throughout life. And if you don't have a good theology of it, then you're kind of stuck.
Jesus could have avoided suffering.
Good.
He chose to go through it.
Had to play that card.
Praise the Lord. Well, that's
true.
a challenge to me.
Yeah,
I'm
I know.
not saying
Absolutely.
that as if I've arrived, but that. Oh my goodness.
Yeah. Well, like you said too, I mean, life's just hard.
Yeah.
And this just helps us to navigate it a little better when they're knowing what the leadership program teaches.
And it builds resilience. And so there's so much anxiety. We've talked about all this, right? There's so much anxiety in kids and so much of this that why not involve them in something that's actually going to help them grow in their interior life as well as the small team leadership skills, because those are transferable.
Yes.
Beyond, like you've said multiple times, beyond the outdoors, right? Yeah, very, very good. So at the end of the day, how would you talk about what the picture of success that the leadership kind of begins with and kind of strives for? What would that picture be like?
So I like the picture idea, and I have two, and they're also going to be somewhat countercultural, especially in a world where we love sports and winners. I don't see the lone survivor or the first finisher of a race with their arms held high in victory, or on the top of the mountain. We don't see that as success. Instead, it's the smiling competitor, arms stretched out around their teammates, their fellow competitors, and helping them across the finish line. Or they get up to the top of the mountain and see that it's safe to pull up their friends who are struggling along the way. And then probably the less favorable one, because we can all kind of get on board with that, but the less favorable one is probably that sometimes success is laying down at the end of the race, having finished dead last, but smiling because you gave it your all. And you encourage those around you to succeed even in your place.
Yeah, no, that's really good.
And that's what I see as success through the leadership program.
Yeah. You know, one last thing, and then we probably have to close, but people do also ask over the years, they've asked a lot about, well, can't a student get all that from sports? Because you brought up sports. And I think it's important to kind of just quickly talk about it.
That is important.
And I think the reality is there is a select group of people who can get that from sports. And depending on what school you're in, how hard it is to get into that particular sport. And the other thing that's interesting about sports is there's also that sense there's a lot of recognition that goes with sports, and there's also applause that goes with that. So can sports teach a lot of the similar kind of things? Yes. It can build character. It's a great thing. We both all participated in sports in high school and things. But I think one of the differences, uniqueness of the leadership program is when you reach the top of the mountain, no one is there filming you or putting your picture on a newspaper or applauding you. It's an intrinsic sense of accomplishment. And like you said, your team is there, and you don't have that added support in a sense. So there is that sense that I've got this done with the Lord's help, with my team's help. So I've always thought that was one of the differences.
That's interesting.
You know? Yeah, they're both valuable, very valuable. But I think the leadership program brings that piece that's, I think, really unique, especially when you have to stand all by yourself and there's no one applauding. Right. Which you're doing the right thing in real life, you don't always get applauded.
Right.
In fact, the opposite,
quite the
right?
opposite
Yeah.
sometimes.
Boy, what a great conversation.
Yeah, I could talk to you for a lot longer.
I know. There's so much, and we didn't even touch on. We have to bring you back because we didn't even touch on a lot of the events that are there.
Right.
Yeah.
There's a number of events in the fall and spring. There are overseas mission trips for juniors and seniors. There's there's things that, like a winter expedition happens in January and takes people usually to the northern Georgia mountains or somewhere around there. Various places we've been, actually.
Right, and even into Alabama.
Even into Alabama. And so I think somebody totaled up one time. I think our kids here at CCS through the leadership program travel like 5,000 miles or something like that during the course of their high school career.
Well, I guess I'll see within the next 4 years.
I know, right? There you go. Very
Get
good.
your step counter ready.
I know, right? Very good. Well, so...
thank you so much for coming on today.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah, indeed.
Yeah, and thank you for tuning in to the Gospel Centered Education Podcast. Join us next week as we'll be exploring other aspects of other key programs of CCS.
Yeah, we've got a couple more programs we want to get to before the end of the school year this year. And so, but in the meantime, we're so glad you guys tuned in. And remember, Jesus is Lord. Have a good day, you guys. Take care.
Thank you for listening to the Gospel Centered Education Podcast, brought to you by Community Christian School in Tallahassee, Florida. You can find us online at myccs.org.